I stood in the doorway, holding my two crying children, as my mother-in-law handed the house keys to my husband's pregnant mistress. "She needs it more than you," Patricia said with a smile that froze my blood. They had no idea the broke wife. They were tossing out on the company that paid everyone their bills. They had no idea I was about to take everything back. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you, this story is for you. My name is Ryland Sterling, and 8 years ago I made the biggest mistake of my life. I married Brandon Sterling. I was 22, fresh out of college and foolishly in love. What Brandon didn't know, what no one knew, was that I wasn't the struggling graduate student he thought he was rescuing. At 19, I had built a tech startup called TechVision Solutions. By the time I met him, it was already worth millions. By the time we married, I was sitting on a fortune. But I hid it all. I wanted love that wasn't bought or calculated. So I played the part of the struggling freelancer working late nights on my laptop. Brandon never questioned it. His family certainly didn't. They assumed I was playing poor and lucky to have caught their golden son. For 8 years, I lived two lives. By day, I was the meek daughter-in-law who scrubbed their floors and cooked for their Sunday gatherings. By night, I was the CEO of an $800 million company, making decisions that changed industries. I bought the house we lived in, put it in Brandon's name as a wedding gift. I anonymously saved his father's failing business. I even made sure Brandon's marketing firm landed a multi-million-dollar contract with my company so he could have a career to brag about. I gave them everything. They gave me nothing but cruelty. Patricia treated me like hired help from the start. Every Sunday at 6 a.m., she called demanding I come over to cook for 15 people. If anything wasn't perfect, she'd humiliate me in front of everyone. Brandon would shrug. "Just try harder to please her," he'd say. His father, George, barely spoke to me. His sister, Karen, excluded my children from family games, showering her own kids with gifts while mocking mine. "Is that the best you can afford?" she'd sneer, pretending to care. I endured it all for the children. I thought a stable family mattered more than my pride. I was wrong. 6 months ago, the truth began to unravel. Brandon started staying out late, coming home smelling of expensive perfume I'd never worn. When I questioned him, he got angry. The night, he slapped me right in front of our 6-year-old daughter, Sophie. Something in me shattered. Weeks later, I found his second phone hidden in his gym bag. The password was our wedding date. Inside were hundreds of messages with a woman named Melissa, a co-worker. They'd been together 8 months. She was 6 months pregnant with his child. But it wasn't the affair that broke me. It was the plan. They were plotting how to get rid of me, how to move her into my house, how to make my kids call her mom. When I confronted Brandon, I expected denial, maybe shame. Instead, he called his mother. Within an hour, the entire family was in my living room, the same house I bought, and they turned my life into a courtroom. "You're always on that laptop," Patricia said. "What kind of wife ignores her husband to play on the computer?" "Melissa's supportive," Karen added smugly. "She's everything you're not." George finally looked at me. "My son deserves happiness. You've been holding him back for years." Then Patricia dropped her final cruelty. "Melissa's pregnant. She needs a stable home. This house is perfect for her." I laughed quietly. "This is my house," I said. "It's in Brandon's name," she snapped. "That makes it his house. And he's decided Melissa and the baby need it more than you do. You can stay with your parents or find some cheap little apartment." Brandon didn't look at me when he said, "You have 1 week. Pack your things and go." But humiliation wasn't enough for them. They wanted to crush me. That last week was pure psychological warfare. Melissa moved in immediately, claiming the master bedroom, while I was forced into the windowless storage room with a thin mattress. Patricia made me cook breakfast for Melissa every morning. "She's eating for 2, she reminded me. "Unlike you, she's actually giving my son a healthy baby." The torment escalated. Melissa accidentally spilled boiling coffee on my hand. Patricia cut my hair while I slept, laughing when I woke up to find it butchered. "Now your outside matches your inside," she said. On the 6th day, when my children asked why Melissa slept in my bed and why we had to leave, Patricia locked them in the basement to teach them a lesson. I heard them screaming. I begged. She blocked me from the door. They need to understand, she hissed. Their mother is abandoning them because she doesn't love them enough to fight for her marriage. That was the moment something in me clicked. No more tears. No more begging. That night I made calls. Quiet, calculated calls. On the 7th day, they threw me a farewell party. Neighbors came. The family gave speeches about what a failure I was. Melissa announced she was having a boy, Brandon Jr., the son he always deserved. Then they demanded I give a thank you speech. I stood before them, holding my trembling hands behind my back, and said, "Thank you all for showing me exactly who you are. I'll never forget this." They thought I was expressing gratitude. I was making a vow. That night, I left the house with Sophie and Jake. They thought I was heading to a cheap apartment. Instead, my driver took us to my 15,000 square foot penthouse overlooking the water. My kids thought it was a hotel. "It's not a hotel, babies," I told them. "It's our new home." The next morning, I walked into my office at TechVision Solutions. My assistant greeted me with a calm smile. "Operation Phoenix is ready to execute," she said. I didn't hesitate. Burn it all down. The first domino fell on Monday. Brandon's company, Preston and Associates, received a termination notice from TechVision Solutions. That single contract made up 85% of their revenue. By Friday, half his employees were gone, his salary cut by 60%. By Friday, Preston and Associates was bleeding. By the following week, George's investments, those I quietly controlled through shell companies, crumbled when I liquidated and sold at the right moment. His retirement fund evaporated. Andrew lost his job in the overnight restructuring of his company. I watched every domino fall from my office, tracing the damage in real time. Calls I intercepted, panic texts, frantic voicemails. They had no clue who was behind any of it. They only knew that luck had turned on them. Within 2 months, Brandon couldn't pay the mortgage. Melissa was terrified. $147 in his bank account doesn't inspire confidence in a future she'd been promised. Patricia pawed through pawn shops trying to salvage jewelry she'd once paraded in church. Karen screamed for help she didn't deserve. Their unity splintered into blame, bargaining, and bitter recrimination. The perfect family dissolved into a spectacle of regret. Then came the moment I'd set a careful trap for. The reveal. I'd installed discreet cameras in the family home months earlier, months when their cruelty looked like routine. On a day Brandon came by to drop the kids off for supervised visitation, he decided to follow me. He watched me park at the TechVision headquarters, watched security salute me, watched me stride into meetings with people who call me Ms. Sterling. That night, he typed my name into the search bar and found every headline he'd chosen to ignore for 8 years. I watched them through my surveillance feed as Brandon played link after link for his family. Patricia fainted. Karen screamed. George sat stunned, calculating the losses his life had been built on. Melissa, pregnant and trusting, realized she'd been sold a lie. They spent the next hours tearing each other apart. It was messy. It was perfect. Apologies came in a tidal wave. Texts, flowers, frantic letters. I let none reach me. Security at my building threw the bouquet away. My lawyer answered the plea for contact with one sentence. Cease all contact or face a restraining order. Patricia's public meltdown in my lobby. She begged, crawled, begged security in front of cameras, went viral. Internet users excavated photos from the farewell party, the speeches, every humiliating post. The comments were merciless. Karma, social edition. I filed for and received a restraining order. They showed up at Sophie's school one day and created such a scene the police were called. I pressed charges where appropriate. Melissa had the baby, then left Brandon when she realized the financial reality was as empty as his promises. She sued for child support. His wages were garnished. He was forced to sign up for parenting classes he never intended to take. When divorce papers were filed, they barely made a dent in me. I prepared for this, legally and emotionally. The prenup I'd insisted on years ago was ironclad. All my assets were mine. the house a revocable gift tied to fidelity. My legal team presented the evidence. Audio of the family's derision, video from the hidden cameras, messages between Brandon and Melissa, and even the judge's reading was blunt. "You treated your wife like garbage while living off her money," he said, visibly disgusted. "You deserve nothing." Brandon walked out of court with nothing. I received full custody of Sophie and Jake, sole control of TechVision, and the ability to keep the house I had originally bought for us. He was ordered to repay loans he'd taken from the company, $250,000, and granted supervised visitation, 4 hours a month. He cried in the courtroom once the veneer dropped, but tears don't undo choices. Their public fall continued. Karen sold their family's humiliation to a tabloid who ran their faces with a headline. We rejected a billionaire for a secretary. The internet turned them into a cautionary meme. Patricia's social life ended. George lost memberships and respect. The community that had once celebrated them closed ranks against them. The final act of collapse came months later. Foreclosure notices, eviction trucks, a trailer park for Brandon, subsidized senior housing for his parents, Andrew flipping burgers, Karen cleaning houses in another state. Everything they'd scorned me for came back to bite them. I could have relished the revenge forever. But it wasn't about schadenfreude. It was about justice, and about creating something meaningful from the wreckage. I donated $200 million to found Phoenix Rising, a foundation to help abused women escape dangerous homes and rebuild with housing, legal aid, and job training. I hired therapists who had helped Sophie and Jake heal. I invested in programs that taught financial literacy and entrepreneurship to women who had been systemically silenced. A year later, I stood in a ballroom hosting a gala for Phoenix Rising. Sophie, now 7, and Jake, 5, were in dresses and vests, laughing and safe. We'd hired Miss Claire, a nanny who treated my children like her own. I'd met Daniel, Dr. Dan, 6 months earlier, a pediatric surgeon who loved them as if they were part of his own life. He knew I was on our first date and didn't blink. He proposed last month. I said yes. As I smiled next to Daniel in my custom gown, I spotted him across the room. Brandon, carrying a tray of champagne glasses. For a beat, his face fell apart as the memory of what? He'd lost it him like cold water. He dropped the tray. Glass shattered. His supervisor fired him on the spot. I didn't turn back. I didn't need to. The chapter he'd written for me was over. Before the night ended, I sent one last envelope to everyone who had participated. A USB drive with the messages, videos, and recordings, the receipts of the cruelty, plus a short note. I heard everything. I saw everything. You destroyed yourselves. Patricia suffered a complete breakdown. She was hospitalized. For them it was ruin. For me it was closure. Now, when people ask me if I regret hiding my success, I tell them that humility was my choice, but deception was theirs. They mistook silence for weakness. I used silence to rebuild, not to punish, but to protect and empower my children and others like them. Sophie and Jake call Brandon by his first name now. They're safe. They're healing. They're thriving. If there's one thing I want you to take away, never confuse kindness for powerlessness. Quiet people can be the most dangerous because they plan, they build, they wait until they're ready to rise. My life didn't unfold the way I imagined at 22. It turned into something greater. A home my children deserve, a foundation that saves lives, and a family rebuilt on truth and trust. I married a good man this year, and I sleep soundly. The past is a closed door, one I locked not out of spite but out of necessity. Karma is patient. She never forgets an address. If my story gave you chills or hope, tell me. Would you have done the same? Team Rylan, forever.